This was so bad. This is a low point in our franchise.
It can get lower than it already has.
Diving stop to his right, J.P. Crawford, the throw to first, and he got him. Holy smokes, what a play by Crawford.
Straight three, caught, got him.
Out to center again.
Keep carrying, baby, keep carrying.
Goodbye, baseball.
The world has got to take notice of this Mariner ball club.
What's up, guys? This is part 2 of 10 of Bohn and I's OOTP Seattle Mariners rebuild, starting in 2010, going all the way to 2019. This is part 2, which means we're in 2011. So if you haven't seen part 1 yet, make sure to go check that one out as it covers everything 2010. I know things are a little bit slow right now because we're in the rebuild, but I'll tell you, it will all be worth it in the end as you'll get to know the roots and the core of how this team was built. It's going to get exciting as special things happen for both Bohn and I in the mid-2000s, so just a couple episodes from now. So make sure to stay tuned, and here is part 2 right now. All right, so both of us having a difficult 2010 to say the least, but I think we have similar, anecdotes coming into the future is that we rebuilt and we have young guns coming up. And I continued to add on to that in 2011, and that was the story. My 2 goals that I wrote down before this, again, develop the young guys and ship off the veterans at the deadline to hopefully get more prospects. That was what I was going for, prospects, because, again, that was one of the weak spots for this team coming in. And now I had turned it from 0 in the top 100, mid-2010 to 6 going in. So I was very excited. And then I get a pleasant email to open up the season where we have the top 2 prospects in the game going into 2011
Wow.
in Jose Fernandez and Josh Donaldson. So I was really riding high after this going into that season.
That's incredible.
The interesting thing about Donaldson, Fernandez, I knew I was going to start in A-ball, but for Donaldson, he'd been up for a handful of games with the A's and he hit like $160. And then with us, when he was traded over, he hit 280. So I was excited. I was going to give him the shot to start opening day, but a short leash. If he was struggling, I was going to send him right back down. I did not want to ruin the development, especially, to use this phrase, I did not want to Mike Zunino him. I didn't want to call him up too early. So going into April, again, one of the biggest things I was keeping an eye on was Pineda. As I mentioned, we were moving him to the pen, at least for this bit, just because he was rehabbing. I kind of looked at this as an extended rehab period at the big league level. I didn't want him throwing 100 pitches every 5 days. Instead, I would rather him be in the pen. And in his first 27 innings in April, 3.6 ERA. So we decided to move him to the closing role, which is a big step, gutsy step. But I'm not prioritizing winning, and I thought Pineda had the stuff to be a closer, and I was willing to test it out. But this is where things get even more crazy. So at that point, Felix is back. We're like now in late May, or mid-June, I should say. Felix has made 11 starts. Where do you think his ERA was at?
I'm going to say in between the 3.0 and 4.0 range.
5.43. So Felix was not doing well coming off the Tommy John surgery. So it was a contract year. Decided to pull the trigger. I sent him over to the Padres for the number 4 prospect in the game in Corey Kluber, Jeremy McBride, and Nick Vincent, who obviously was a Mariner in real life back from like 16, 17, and 18. I also sent Doug Fister to the Orioles for a former number 1 overall prospect back last year in Jake Arrieta. So at this point, I am stacked on pitching prospects. My projected 2013 rotation in my head was going to be Fernandez, Kluber, Arrieta, Roark, Tyson Ross, and then Michael Pineda and Brandon Workman kind of working their way in there somehow.
Wow.
So this was absurd for me. I loved it, though. It was hard to give up Felix, and I almost considered like re-signing him in the offseason. Mm-hmm. But, that was the story of the season. It's a bit short. We ended up finishing with a record of like 66 and 96, 31 games back, so not ideal. The Braves ended up winning the World Series. My MVP, or the MVP in the American League, was Jed Lowry, which surprised me.
Wow.
I know, right? I know. And then Joey Votto in the NL. Back-to-back years, Joey Votto has won the Most Valuable Player award, so he's really picking stuff up. Personal awards, again, it was, not too many people to go from, but Greg Hallman was my MVP, who, despite barely scratching up over the Mendoza line, hit 36 bombs, 77 RBIs, 26 stolen bases, good for a 3.6 WAR, which is identical to Jack Wilson's WAR from the previous year. So again, a young guy, who, I wanted to, continue his legacy in real life. Everyone knows what happened, and it's devastating and so sad.
Yeah.
Happy he was able to put up good numbers for me in this season. So he's my MVP. My Cy Young
Nice.
is Michael Pineda, who, as I mentioned, was fantastic. And I didn't mention this, but we ended up, after he was doing so well as a reliever, we brought him back as a starter. Overall, 46 games, 3.02 ERA, but as a starter in 14 starts, a 2.44 ERA. So he's a guy I'm really looking to bounce back in 2012 and put up good numbers. Unsung hero,
Nice.
our only all-star, and again, it was probably because we needed a representative, but Mr. Kyle Seager. Now,
Okay.
garnered at 257, 12 homers, 58 RBIs. He did make the all-star team, and because of that, he's my unsung hero. Again, a guy who I think is going to be solid going towards the future. Most disappointing, I told you, it's quite a ride with this guy. My boy Erasmo, the ERA,
Oh, no.
5.45. Yeah. He's just
Wow.
21 years old, though. I knew I was giving him more of a chance. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and the reason why I don't have much detail about that season is because I was really focusing, Bohn, on trying to get the young guys up and give them opportunities. There weren't too many guys to trade. In fact, I didn't make a single big, huge trade besides the Felix one. But going into this offseason, I wanted to add a big name. I knew I had my core of prospects, and it turned out being a little too early because I didn't exactly know who was established or not. But I tried re-signing Felix. We could not come to an agreement. And again, he wanted a ton of money, and I was not taking the risk on that after a really rough season. Tried Hanley Ramirez, again, wanted so much. He was in free agency till February, and again, wanted like $30 million a year. I was not going for that. So I decided to hold back. The next offseason was going to be the one where I made my big splash. And I actually think that was a better idea just because, as I said, I really didn't know who was going to be my guys. Because usually how a rebuild works, right, is you build up your farm, you figure out where your pluses are, and then you fill in the gaps through trades of free agency. I didn't really know what gaps I needed to fill yet, so I was happy I held back. But a big trade I made, this one was interesting. I sent Dustin Ackley over to the White Sox in exchange for Dexter Fowler and Nate Jones. Fowler just played a handful of seasons with the Rockies and the White Sox at that point. He was traded. Nate Jones, a good relief prospect as well. So I was excited about that. I thought Fowler could be good in the outfield, especially since I was kind of lacking in outfield prospects besides Kane. And then I drafted Anthony Rendon 5th overall. I liked that move a lot. A good guy to maybe come up and replace what Ackley was meant to be and maybe hopefully do better. This was difficult because I knew I wanted a middle infield prospect, so I was considering him, Carlos Correa, and Corey Seager, but I ended up going Rendon overall. And remember, at this point, he's a second baseman, not a third baseman, so I'll talk about that in a second. Also picked up Joey Gallo, who out of high school, his power numbers were absurd already. I feel like I could have just thrown him right in the big leagues. I did not. I actually kept him in the minors for a very long time. And then 2 huge deals that end up playing huge impacts. I'm not going to tell you if they're positive or negative, but big impact deals for the future. The first one is Nick Markakis, similar to your Zobrist one. A guy who's been in the league for a bit. I wouldn't quite consider him, like he was a veteran, but he was still like in his prime a little bit. To a 4-year deal, I front-loaded it so that it was more expensive in 2012 and 13, so that in 14 and 15, when I wanted to get free agents or I wanted to extend players, I would have more money because literally my payroll was absurd. It was about $60 million at this point. So I was like, why don't I just spend it on some guys now and guarantee them for a longer time, but guarantee more money earlier than later. So that was a 4-year deal. And then the big one, I found Xander Bogaerts as an international free agent, 19 years old, 3 years, $13 million deal. So that was a big one as well. It was actually 2 years with a player option for the 3rd year. So I was really relying on him. There was my shortstop prospect. So at this point, if you look at my depth chart of prospects, I have my rotation, which I talked about earlier, which I love to death with Fernandez, Arrieta, Kluber, and co. And then we have Kane and Fowler in the outfield with Markakis in right. Hopefully he can carry on and put good years later in 14 and 15. That was my assumption. And then I have Bogaerts and Rendon, hopefully up the middle in the future, Donaldson behind the plate, and then maybe fill in the gaps at first base and third base and in the pen. So I was really happy. Taking a look at the top 100 at that point, Bogaerts was the top prospect in Major League Baseball after that. Fernandez at 2, Rendon 13, Kluber 28, Roark 68. Donaldson had graduated, so he was already They already established him as a big leaguer. And so he put up a good year as well, actually, might I add, about 230 or so. So, yeah,
Nice.
that was my off season. A little bit less exciting than 2010. But, again, things are starting to pick up. I'm starting to kind of see things fall into place. I had an idea of who's playing where, and I was very happy with it.
There we go. Wow. So a progressive 2011, huh?
Absolutely, Bohn. Absolutely.
That is exciting. Well, so for 2011, my goal was avoid 100 losses. I really did not want to lose 100 games. I wanted to shop Figgins for something promising, just like a prospect.
Yeah.
And then I also wanted to finish with at least 5 prospects in the top 100. So those are kind of my goals.
That'd be very good.
And so kind of just some people that were in my organization. So Yusmeiro Petit became the number 5 starter. He was someone that was in my organization for a bit. And I also had signed in the offseason, I forgot to mention this, was Jorge De La Rosa. So he was just a small rotation arm that could be plugged in there. And so I was really happy just to have them there. But I checked to see how Walker was doing. It was horrendous. So I set him to available. I made him available for trade, and unfortunately, nobody wanted him. But the promising thing was that Pineda would be able to get called up soon, because I sent him back down after the horrendous 2-13 season he had, and he was really just looking promising. And so I was really excited about that. Brad Hand was finally coming up. Marte was now in the starting lineup. People were just like improving at a rapid pace, and I was really, really excited about it. And so eventually we had a trade come in where I was thinking about maybe trading Michael Pineda.
Okay.
Possibly for some prospects. And so there were 2 trades that I looked at. The first one was with the Cardinals, and it was going to be for Lance. I would trade Pineda for Lance Lynn and Matt Adams. So
I don't know if I would do that one.
Some young prospects. But then there was also a trade number 2 where I would send Pineda for Chris Archer and Justin Bohr.
Oh, and actually, I forgot, in your game, he's struggling. So these actually might be good moves.
Right. So he's struggling. And then I kind of realized something, is that Chris Sale was not turning into a starter.
Well, in real life, he came up as a reliever, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and I was kind of like, uh-oh. I'm really hoping I can fix that. And it would not let me change him to a starter. So I was like, okay, fine. He'll be a bullpen guy for us. I ended up trading Dustin Ackley for pitching prospect Alexander Torres, who ended up kind of being, you'll see how Torres turns out. But he eventually plays a role in it, and a couple other minor trades made along the way. But then tragedy struck.
Oh, no.
It's one thing that I learned. It's that when you think you should pull the trigger on a trade, to do it, Michael Pineda tore his UCL and was out for 11 months. This was about 1 week after I nearly traded him twice and was out for 11 months.
That is tough.
Tragic. And just when I thought I wouldn't be hurt enough, Goody wants to be traded.
Oh my goodness, Bohn. This is just like a parody of, oh my gosh. This is tough.
It was so it was just bad. And
Goody has a big contract too, because if he wasn't doing well, that was probably very difficult to trade him.
Yeah, it was really tough.
Did you end up trading Goody?
I do end up trading Goody, but we'll get to that in a second. So we're in July, and we kind of take a look at, you get those updates on how your players are progressing. And so Sale, Marte, and Kendrick all went up in the month of July. And so that was really promising. And this is when, again, I just wanted to free up some cap space and make room for some people to come up. Chase Darno was having a phenomenal year in the minors, and I finally found my opportunity to trade Sean Figgins.
Okay.
But along with that, I had to trade Ben Zobrist and Juan Diaz. I don't know if he was in your organization.
He was
or
third
you ended
baseman,
up.
right?
Yeah. And so I traded him to Pittsburgh again for Barry Enright and Daniel Taylor. And unfortunately, I had to retain 55% of Zobrist's contract. So that was probably the worst trade I had made all year. That was really, really frustrating. And so just after I made that trade to get Chase Darno to come up, he dislocates his finger and is out for 3 months.
What is with you and the this is so tough.
It was so bad. And so nearly traded Felix, but I'm going to try and just wait a little bit longer before the deadline hits to try and get some more prospects.
Okay.
And so this is a mistake because I forgot. This was so bad. This was a low point in our franchise.
It can get lower than it already has?
This was a big low point.
Okay.
I thought Felix had one more year of free agent or of his contract. I didn't think it expired. And so I kept him and did not trade him for any prospects. And so I didn't get anything out of him.
Did you at least offer him the qualifying offer so you could get the draft pick if he signed somewhere else?
I did.
Okay, we'll get to that later then. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so move I'm making the deadline is I trade Jorge De La Rosa for Sean Haviland. Trade with Oakland, and that was a nice trade. And Erasmo gets called up. So Erasmo now, the De La Rosa is gone. Erasmo comes up. And we just the month kind of goes on, and the season ends. And I do not end up trading Goody just yet. He's still demanding a trade and is furious. He is so upset. A highlight of the year is that Tony Watson, who made that trade in the Sweeney trade, had a 28-game save streak.
That's great.
That was wonderful to see. So he finished the year at 53 and 109.
Oh, that's worse.
It was worse. And so our MVP was Starling Marte. Had a great year for us. Our Cy Young, Felix really – no one had a good year, and so I gave it to Tony Watson. I mean, the man was having an unreal year as a closer.
Okay. Some Eric Gagne treatment.
Pitched in 74 games and had a 1.48 ERA.
Great.
So, that was really impressive. Unsung hero was Eduardo Escobar. Had a really solid year for a young prospect. And the disappointment was Goody hitting 221. 114
oh my gosh!
hits.
And he has what? 4 years of 40 million. 4 years of 40 million left.
Yep.
Oh my goodness, that was tough.
And so the season score came in again.
I'm gonna say this time they gave you better than one. I am, because I think that they could see you're going on the up.
Yeah. Well, I wish more people thought like you.
No,
I did not think it was possible to get one in back-to-back seasons.
Oh my god!
But we had a season score of 1 again.
That is too good.
That was just so bad.
That is too good. Oh my god!
And so it ends up. It was just so bad. The season ends. Felix signs with the Dodgers.
No.
I know.
Felix signed. Actually, I'll wait. But yeah.
Goody gets traded to the Reds for Danny Dorn and Brad Boxberger. And I have to retain 80% of his contract.
And that was such a homer deal. I can't believe he backstabbed you like that. You gave him such a good deal that he's just like, all right, bye.
It was so bad. And so we had our draft, and this was actually really cool. I like this. I drafted Garrett Cole, who was a solid pick, just to bolster the rotation. I mean, I can only imagine how dangerous the Fernandez and Cole could be in the future at 1 and 2. Josh Bell was my second pick in the draft, and then I went with Edwin Diaz in later rounds.
Very nice.
And I also was able to actually snag Ronaldo Lopez in the draft. And so I was kind of hoping to transfer him into a starter because he was a relief pitcher.
Yeah.
And so going into 2012, we had 4 players in the top 100. So I nearly missed my goal. Fernandez was number 10. Escobar was 47. Nunez was 67. Ramirez was 98. And Sale was 101. So I was 1 point off from hitting 5 in the top 100.
I'd give it to you at that point, though. I'd give it to you.
Yeah. And so I
felt
really good about it. Yeah, exactly. So I was pretty happy about that. And then the offseason, our budget got reduced to $90 million. So reduced from 100 to 90.
That's what you get for back-to-back one-score seasons.
I know, exactly. It was so bad. And then we actually only made one free agent signing, and we went with Irvin Santana, just a veteran pitcher to kind of maybe help these young guys. Signed him for 3 years, $12 million. It's not bad.
Still good at that point, too, in real life at least. So
it was kind of a cheap contract for someone that had up, and so I was really excited about that. And so I was kind of ready to get in 2012 and hoping that, like, the prospects could start to kind of see what it's like to be up in the majors.
Well, hopefully, at least in the future of this series, you could go from a one-score man to a number one in the division man. I have faith in you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That this turnaround for Bohn Crane Jr.'s Mariners could be quite the story. They're gonna make a movie about it. One ball.
They will.
Alrighty, that wraps up part 2 of 10 of Bohn and I's OOTP Seattle Mariners Rebuild. We thank you guys so much for watching. That was just 2011. 2012 is coming up next. It's not out yet, but it will be out soon. And if it's already out and you guys are watching this later, just why not go watch it now, as I'll tell you. It's a very exciting one for different reasons for Bohn and I. 2012 is very intriguing. So with that said, I'm Max Tanzer. Bohn Crane was just on as well. We thank you so much for watching Trident's Up. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.